In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. I think it's on most mornings of the week that if you go along to Peg's Diner up here on Church Street, there's a sort of crowd that gathers around the counter where Peg may be doing her cooking, and the crowd, I suspect, I don't know who they are, but some might be truckers or going off, men going off to work early in the morning. And I think they really enjoy the kind of banter and interchange there with Peg, and that's at least half of the fun of going there and having breakfast in the morning, is to listen to how that goes on. For example, once I think it must have been one of those men there that was complaining about their job to Peg, and the next thing you hear Peg's voice ringing through the diner. She says, "Listen, if you worked for me, I'd fire you too." So, even if you don't want to pay for the breakfast, Peg is a floor show all of her own. So an insult coming from Peg is taken in the loving sense in which it is meant. And the gospel reading we have this week reminded me of it, because it's difficult. It's a very difficult one, in one sense at least, is that what Jesus says about this woman is really quite insulting, and you can't get past it. I mean, although it is a Jewish attitude or word that Jesus uses here, not his own, yet it is insulting to that woman that she would be classed among the dogs because she is a Canaanite, because she's not part of the chosen people. And so it's puzzling, why would Jesus do it, especially since the passage before, he has been saying that God looks on the inside of people, not on the outside of them. So God does not judge people by their ethnicity or skin color or anything on the outside of them. God looks at the inside. Jesus has just been making that very clear. And the next thing, it looks like he is relating to somebody based on their ethnicity and gender, a woman, Canaanite woman, so he can't speak to her. So that would make it very puzzling and very difficult. But of course we don't know the exact context. If it was like Peg's Diner, maybe there was some kind of a repartee going on. There's many times in the gospel we don't know the whole context of what is happening. So it's sometimes a little difficult to see just what does Jesus mean in this place. And here I think at any rate we could say the purpose of this gospel reading for Matthew to include it comes with that last sentence. That's where the purpose lies. Jesus said, "Great woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." Great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish. So the point here is that it's her faith which leaps over this boundary of the fact that she's not one of the promised, one of the chosen people. And I think there's a few boundaries, this question of the boundaries that there are in our life, just a few ways that I'd like to touch on it this morning. It seemed very important. And the first one is exactly what she's talking about, that sometimes because we have done things that are wrong, and do things that are wrong, we feel that we are at a distance from God. Sometimes we feel our faith is not enough. And yet, where there is that faith, it takes us over that boundary, that for all of us, God's forgiveness and God's healing is available. So that's one fence that our faith takes us over, into the presence of God. And there's a wonderful, I love one line from this reading from Romans, right in the middle there, where it says, "For the gifts and calling of God are irrevocable." The gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. I think that is so beautiful. It's like a promise to all of us. at times that we feel we may have let God down, and who doesn't feel that way sometimes, that we've let God down or let other people down, that God doesn't change in his love for us. The gifts and calling of God are irrevocable. He's speaking about the Jews here, of course, that what God has given them, God will never take back, because what God doesn't give and take like that, but he is always faithful. But it's also true for us. So when we respond by faith to God, we jump over that gap that is between us. And it applies, for example, to Abraham as well. It's Abraham's faith. Abraham himself was of another ethnicity. He was Iraqi, really. So he wasn't a Jew, you could say. There's a difference there. He himself is a child of faith. And it's his faith that, as Paul says, reconciles him to God, that God reckons it as righteousness to him. So that's the one fence. And another fence is being able to share our faith with others. And I thought one of the barriers that there may be is that of ageism in our society. It's so important for us to share our faith, share ourselves, share our faith with the younger generation in our time. And sometimes we may feel that's difficult to do, that there's like a gap between us, that you don't read the same magazines, you don't listen to the same music, you don't, when there's a conversation going on, what you would converse about and what a person of a different age group would converse about might be quite different. So you wonder, how can I share my faith? And yes, it's very important to do it. If we're not in our homes with our children, with our grandchildren, with our godchildren, sharing our faith, it's not going to happen somewhere else. Today, it's more and more activities happen on Sunday mornings, so the church has less and less ability to connect with young people at that time or other times. There's less and less teaching of any kind of faith or religion in schools, as you know. So this makes the home really important. And if there are grandchildren, nephews, nieces, anything in your life, godchildren, you've got to be thinking about how to share your faith with them. And it can be in different ways. One way is to make sure you're praying for them all the time, especially as godparents, but for all the children that are in our lives, to be holding them up in prayer. Another way is to make sure there's a children's Bible in the house that is fun to read, fun to page through for visitors or guests. And they might find a story, you can explain what it means. And another way would be in some kind of daily prayer. We've got the forward day by day, you could read that at table, or at least just say grace at table, and be able to talk about what your faith means to you around the table. So that's another fence. The one fence is to jump over that distance that sometimes there is, but we feel there is between us and God. Another one would be that of age. And another one is that of ethnicity. We live in a time in which it's woeful how far the divisions are growing between nations when you think about it. It's as if there's a huge gap that is growing between nations, Jews and other people in the Middle East, or Afghanis, Iraqis, Iranians. And here in this country, that is really astoundingly bad for me. It's shocking to think of a state in the United States where the governor has declared a curfew. A curfew, that sounds like wartime. And it's a reminder of how racism seethes around, flows around all the time. And we have to make sure, I think, as Christians, it's really our responsibility, a very important responsibility, all the time, to be building bridges to people of other cultures. It's so natural for us to go into little clubs of people who are like us, who speak like us, who whatever us means to you. And we have to constantly make that step towards the stranger, towards the minority, towards the person who's different, make sure that we are doing that, inviting people into our homes. It can be such an important thing to do. I know there have been times for me, and probably for you, where you have been a stranger in a place, and yet people there have, somebody there who seems to have a real touch of God's grace about them, has invited you to their home. Why don't you come and have a meal with us? It would be lovely to get to know you better. That has the very scent of God's grace about it. So that's another big fence. So I'm seeing three fences in this, that as this woman and Jesus cross over the fence of their different ethnicity, and her daughter is healed, let us also in our time be crossing over these fences so that we can know God's healing in our life. In the name of Christ. Amen.